So, for those of you, like I say this if you don't know, my name is Hector Murai, and I run a ministry called Faith and Fandom. You could call it ministry, you could call it just a book series, you can call it different things. It's podcasts, it's Comic-Cons, it's panels, it's all sorts of stuff. But in general, what I like to do is to draw a parallel between faith and geek culture. Because I was going to Comic-Cons for 5 or 6 years, and I wasn't seeing anything remotely encouraging spiritually. In fact, a lot of the spiritual presences that I would see at cons were overly negative, overly judgmental, not kind in the slightest, and I wanted to do something to change that. I wanted to do something to actually make that different, and so I started writing a book series called Faith and Fandom, and I've been doing that for going on, what year is this, 2013? 2013. I've been going on for 6 years, and it's been a good journey. I've learned a lot about the writing process. I've learned a lot about Comic-Con life. I've learned a lot about how these things go. But the core of everything we do with Faith and Fandom is that we're trying to be a safe place that people that don't know about faith can get involved. But on the same way that if you are already involved in faith, we can be an encouragement. Because one of the core concepts and one of the things that we see so often is that people feel like they actually have to live in a separate world. Whether they have to have, like, these are the things I enjoy, but if I'm going to have any kind of pursuit of spiritual life, if I'm going to have any pursuit of God or anything of that nature, then those things have to be separate. For the record, just, disclaimer, I am a Christian pastor. That is my background. Any other beliefs are welcome to be discussed. I'm not here to tell you what you need to believe, but just so you know my background, that is where I come from. But one of the things that I see so often is that people feel like their entertainment, their fandoms, they're a whole separate world. And I don't know about you, but anytime you ever have to divide who you are, something's not going to be true. Anytime you have to live two lives or separate things, it just causes division in your own life. And one of the things that I've seen or that has been encouraging to me is that it doesn't have to be that way, that the things that you're actually interested in can be an encouragement to your faith, can be an encouragement to your faith journey. They can be something to actually help it grow rather than something that holds it back. Now, like, just to ask this question, y'all that are in here, what would you say your favorite fandom is? Like, what are you most interested in?
Wrestling.
What? Wrestling? Okay.
At the moment, My Hero.
My Hero Academia is yours?
Wizard of Oz.
Wizard of Oz, okay. Do you have?
Dungeons and Dragons.
Okay, sweet. That's awesome. Now, I know that growing up in a faith culture, I started getting involved in church and pursuing a relationship with God when I was in my early teenage years. And it was very dogmatic in the sense of, if you like any of these things, you're wrong. Between movies, video games, music, stuff like that, like, I had a very dogmatic youth pastor that would make a habit of finding out what music you were listening to and then calling you out to come bring your stuff to the youth group so he could smash it or break, I just remember sitting in, I was 14 and he broke somebody's Metallica CD. And I was like, okay, this can't be the right way to go. But one of the things I think you'll see is the themes and the things that we're interested in, the fandoms that we're interested in, share a lot of core value with the steps of actually growing in faith and pursuing faith. Some overall themes that you'll see, even in your different fandoms and things you're interested in, you'll see the model of a hero. You'll see the model of a broken society. Quite often you'll see someone be a sacrificial savior. Whether it be just someone in a small act of kindness or to the point of literally dying for others. You see betrayal. You see broken families, you see hurt, you see these things, and all these things that are elements of the stories of the fandoms that we're actually interested in are stuff that you'll actually see if you read the Bible or honestly any religious text or you pursue anything like that. You're going to see that a lot of these same things align together. I have a friend named David Powers. Yeah, lost his name. It's pretty horrible. He calls himself Captain Redbeard, so like remembering someone's real name sometimes is hard. But he actually wrote a book called Game of Thrones versus the Bible. And because one of the things that so often, a lot of people of faith, like you can't watch Game of Thrones because it's the worst. And he actually wrote a book that compared every negative scene in Game of Thrones and found one worse than the Bible. So he said, listen, if you can learn from the Bible, you can learn from Game of Thrones. And then he ended it with a chapter comparing Jon Snow to a messianic figure. He didn't, but it's one of those things. If you set your heart, if you set your attitude that you have to live in two separate worlds, you're going to suffer in that way or not. So one of the things I try and encourage people, one of the things I do, I don't ever try and shoehorn things. I don't try and force things in there. But one of the things I see, if you actually are looking, if you're going into your fandoms with the perspective of you're looking for spiritual content, if you're looking for things to actually draw you closer, you'll find it. But if you're not actually looking, it'll go right over your head. If you're not actually looking, it could be something that you miss. And I think that's something you have to kind of train yourself to do, because some people intentionally put things in their stuff to be spiritually relevant. How many of you saw Man of Steel? Okay. When they were making Man of Steel, which, by the way, I still think personally Man of Steel is one of the better DCEU films. I mean, that's not like saying a whole lot, but it's one of the better ones. And I personally think Man of Steel kind of goes right up there with Dark Knight. Like, if there's one solid Batman movie, it's Dark Knight. If there's one solid one, it's Man of Steel. But Christopher Nolan told Zack Snyder, Christopher Nolan didn't direct it, but he did produce it. And he was part of that process. He intentionally told Snyder to include Christian themes and messianic imagery. He said that the concept of Superman has always been something that has had a Jesus parallel. It's always had a spiritual parallel. So in Man of Steel, there are direct, intentional scenes. Like one, for instance, is right before Superman goes down to save the world at that point with the whole engine thing. Jor-El, his spiritual father, because he's dead, his spiritual father says, you can save them. You can save them all. And then literally, watch the scene. Superman flies backwards with his arms out in the shape of a cross and then goes to the world. And it's just like, that was intentional. They did that on purpose. One of the best ones that I've seen done on purpose, though, is in The Matrix. The Matrix, and it goes so crazy how deep they went with it. But the entire Matrix trilogy is laid out almost in an intentional gospel presentation. But there's actually a book. It's like Faith and Fandom before Faith and Fandom. It's called The Gospel Reloaded. And it's a book of nothing but all the intentional spiritual references in The Matrix. I remember seeing that when I was in high school and college, and I'm like, that's a great idea. But for one thing, for instance, when Agent Smith shows up at the beginning of the second movie, Matrix Reloaded, Agent Smith, and it's a real subtle thing. Agent Smith pulls up. He's got a license plate on the front of his car. No one's ever paid attention to that license plate just haphazardly. The license plate says IS5416. Isaiah 54:16 out of the King James Version says, "Behold, I have created the smith who destroys and brings the fire." But they intentionally wedged that in there. Even going down to like a lot of people didn't enjoy what's the last one called? Revolution?
Revelation.
Was it Revelation or Revolution? Revolution.
Revelation?
Yeah. So the third one, a lot of people.
Oh yeah, the movie was Revolutions. Yeah, I'm sorry. I got the last week of mine.
Yeah. I'm with you. We're all together. In Matrix Revolutions, people didn't they didn't really get the whole Smith Neo fight at the end. But if you read, the intentional direction of it, what they did was this. With the storyline, if you notice in the Matrix, Agent Smith takes over every single person in the Matrix. And he was sin spreading out through mankind. So that every single person in there, and so when Neo went to fight him, couldn't beat it out of him. The only way that he was able to defeat Smith was to take Smith into himself. And then once he did, it destroyed it and everyone else. And so they weren't really intentional with that. Even to the point, if you go back, and I didn't believe it until I went back and watched it. When he dies, when Neo dies, it straight up makes a cross of light.
Yeah.
And so there are times when pop culture or your fandoms will make those intentional references. But then there are other times where it's less intentional, but it's still, more about if you actually are looking for things, you'll find them. One of the things so often is that you think that it has to come from a biblical source or biblical entertainment to think that it's beneficial. But it's not the case, because literally there's nothing in this world that's holy but God. Not really. There's no form of entertainment that is going to live up to God's standards. Period. There's just not one. Because when we say this is godly and it's not, listen, none of it literally matches up or lines up with it. One of the clips, or one of the things that I think of so often, is one of the reasons I started Faith and Fandom was Firefly, the TV show Firefly. And let me see if the sound works. Yeah. One of the things that actually made me want to get started doing this was the TV show Firefly, because I watched it and I got really, the character on there, Shepherd Book, there aren't many good fictional representations of ministers in entertainment. They're just not. Usually, if there's a pastor in a show, they're going to be the bad guy. Yeah. Like the show Broadchurch. Have you seen Broadchurch?
Yeah.
Spoilers if you have. The show Broadchurch, it's a murder mystery whodunit of finding out who killed this little boy. And the minute they show, and usually in any TV show, when they cast a big name actor, that they play a role. And so when they cast Arthur Darvill, Rory from Doctor Who, as a minister about a child murderer, I'm like, you're gonna do it. You're gonna go ahead and rickroll us with that and make the pastor the bad guy again. Thanks for that. But I was really grateful it didn't turn out that way. And then out of 3 seasons of Broadchurch, he didn't royally screw up, and I was like, thank you for being a good representation. In fact, I think it's the last episode of Broadchurch, the entire town gathers together for one of his sermons, and because it's his last sermon, and they said, well, if I'd known this is what you were doing, I would have been here sooner. And I'm like, thanks for a good representation. But Shepherd Book was one of those representations, and I just want to show you this clip. That's not important. Well, I'm trying. So tell you what, the audio is not awesome on that sound bar, so I'm gonna play it right here, and I'm pretty sure my MacBook's gonna be louder than that. So let's see. Closer. Right here. You guys are in here, gather around. That's my best option. Come on now. I gotta figure out how to make the sound louder on that. But, alright, so check this out. Well, I just unplugged it because it wasn't coming. Oh, yeah, it's coming out of there now. Let's see if I can pull it up. Yeah, I maxed it out. Oh, but you know what? Hold on. Let's restart this. I think I know what it's doing. Because I bet it's trying to come out of the projector.
Because it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Give me 1 second.
I'll just feed the call. Is there audio jack?
Here we go. I got it. Output.
Oh, there it is.
All right, it's a little bit. All right. All right, so in that clip, you see that River Tam takes Shepherd Book's Bible. He's the pastor on the ship, and she's ripping it apart because there are things that don't work, don't make sense. And he has this whole line about you don't fix, you don't fix faith, faith fixes you. Now, the fact is that came from a source that's very unlikely. Joss Whedon wrote that. Joss Whedon is a campaigning atheist. He is one of the forefronts of humanist as a thing, not even calling it atheism, focusing on it as humanist. We're not acknowledging, God. So someone who is strongly against, the concept of God still managed to put a character that the source isn't great, or in that, because Joss personally doesn't agree or believe in anything of that nature, but it's something that it challenged me and it was encouraging me in that. So that's one of the instances that Faith and Fandom actually kind of was birthed out of Firefly, because the stuff that I was encouraged by in Firefly, I'm like, I'm going to make, my first idea for all of it was, I'm going to make a book just about the stuff on Shepherd Book and Firefly. It was going to be a devotional on Firefly. It was going to be called By the Book, A Shepherd's Guide to Firefly. And I was like, I made some notes in it, and then I was like, yeah, I don't have enough to do this. But it was one of those things that it helped me to realize the things that encourage our faith don't always have to come from a holy source, because God really does use broken things, and He really does use things that are around us to draw things. One of the things that I see so often is that Jesus taught with parallels, or not parallels, parables. He used stories that people could understand to relate deeper messages. Have you seen Guardians of the Galaxy? Okay. So like we said about looking for spiritual content, we're just watch this one clip, and we're gonna watch it. But here's what I want. I'm not gonna tell you anything. I want you to watch it, and I'm gonna ask you your thoughts on some spiritual content that you could like. Again, don't try and force things, but like, what's it say to you? All right, what's some spiritual connotation, inflection, idea, something you could take from that?
A sacrificial person.
Right. The idea of a sacrificial person, of someone who had sacrificed their lives for their friends. And there's a verse that's frequently used, especially in the military, of greater love is no man than this, and he laid down his life for his friends.
Right.
And that's one I saw. Do you have something?
So what was around them, like the flames around them, was supposed to represent sin, and the way Rapt is like trying to protect them, and then he died. It was like representing Jesus dying on the cross.
Okay, and that's the thing. If you look for stuff, you'll see things like that. But often you're going to see a lot of people that they'll die for someone, and that's something that often draws to that. And they call it, a sacrificial figure, or a messianic figure. In that, one of the things that two people pointed out to me was because I've asked this before at a group, and someone said, dying for your friends. Well, the fact is, the group wasn't just dying for them. Like, literally, if they hadn't done what they had just done, this whole planet would have been gone. That whole world would have been gone. So it was beyond that. And one of the things is that someone had brought back, and he comes back too. Like Groot comes back. But point of interest, they announced after Guardians 2 came out, I think when Avengers 3 came out, with Infinity War, that the Groot we have now is not that Groot.
Right.
It's his son.
Ah.
And that twig that twig that Rocket picked up and they started, the one that's at the end of the movie, is his son basically. So that Groot that died. And one thing too is not only can you find stuff like that in your fandoms, you can also find things that actually help you understand your fandoms better, or understand your faith better. For me, C.S. Lewis, and C.S. Lewis I barely call not Christian anyway, and his stuff is always faith-based in a lot of it. But he wrote the series Chronicles of Narnia. In general, a lot of people benefited from it, but he wrote that series just so his granddaughter would be able to understand God better. He literally wrote one of the best book series in existence just so his granddaughter would be able to understand it better. And for me, The Last Battle, which is the last book in that series, actually helped me understand death, eternity, and everything else way better. I went through Bible college. I sat through classes on, eschatology and eternity, and I sat through classes on this stuff. But then reading that book helped me understand it way better than any college class I took. And for, that's one of the things is if you're actually trying to, see the spiritual elements of these things, it actually helps you understand. But like, for instance, one thing, you watch Doctor Who? Okay. There was a scene a couple seasons ago in Doctor Who that for me, it helped me kind of see a better understanding. But my family watches Doctor Who together, and my 8-year-old daughter at that time and my 6-year-old daughter at that time literally light bulbed, about, because they ask questions about death all the time. They ask questions about that, and we were watching this episode, and they're like, "Oh, well, that makes a lot more sense now." Like, so check this out. This is a clip that actually helped my family understand the spiritual concept better.
This is surreal. Imagine embryos had telephones. It's really not helping. Go with me. Imagine babies in wombs could talk to other babies in other wombs. What would they say? What would they think life was like if they could talk among themselves? I really have no idea. They think that life was 9 months long. Then boom, trapdoor opens, out you fall. Gone forever. Never hear from those guys again. Nothing at the end of the cord. Okay. This isn't really an afterlife. It's just more life than you were expecting.
And like my kids watch this, and they're like, so that's what heaven is. And like, I didn't say anything. I didn't like spiritually ask them the question or anything. They watched this and they're like, that's okay, heaven, got it. I mean, like literally, they'd sat through all these other teachings. They've been to Bible camp. They've been to church. But like this helped them actually understand it better. And so it's not only a thing about being able to find it, it also can be a tool for your understanding with it. And this is with Moana. See Moana?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Okay. This is something, that same thing we did with Groot. Watch this and let's have a discussion. So I want you to look for what you might find as spiritual content with this. So, just to ask, what's something you could understand from that? Yeah.
For her being able to walk through the ocean represents how the Red Sea split for Moses so they could get away from the Egyptians.
Okay.
And then the part with Kikah represents how Jesus went through pretty much a living hell on the cross, and then with her putting the heart back into him and stuff like that, and how he rose back to life, pretty much.
Okay.
I was going to say that God knows that, that's our sinful nature, but He knows that we could be so much better with Him.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, no, that's what it is. Like one of the things that and I've intentionally taught this to my kids through Moana, and I actually wrote a section on it in one of the books too. Is that one of the problems is we end up believing our own negative press that our mistakes, our sins, our failures, that's who we are. But, you know, that God tells us that's not who you are, you know who you are. And, you know, he goes through that process to, you know, show us. And all these things, one of the biggest things I just want to encourage you with is let this stuff be an encouragement to you. Don't feel like you have to divide yourself, because these things can honestly be a great door to your own spiritual growth. These things can be a door to help others. I don't know how, it's a lot easier for me to get people to come to my house to watch Doctor Who than to go to church with me.
Yeah.
Like, I have cable, and I'm one of the few people in my neighborhood that has cable. So I've got people that on Sunday nights or Sunday afternoons, they'll come show up and watch Doctor Who. And, you know, these type of conversations will end up popping up. Or for me, I'm a 21 Pilots fan, and they put out a trilogy of music videos that make a movie recently. And like, I had a bunch of college students at my house yesterday watching these music videos and like pointing out that stuff. Overall, there are two verses that I really attribute and really kind of put towards the heart of what we do. One is Colossians 3:23. It's whatever you do, do it with your whole heart to God, not to man. And that's why I was going back to the whole thing about not being divided. If you have to like hide anything, this is just a phrase that always stuck with me. If you have to hide, you don't need to do it. If you have to hide what you're doing, you don't need to do it. So rather than your entertainment being something you need to hide or that you have to feel guilty about, or because that's one of the things a lot of people feel like you can't enjoy these things and be holy. But again, we're not going to be holier just because you don't watch, you know, this show or that show. The holiness is going to come from the inside. Whatever you do, do it with your whole heart. And I would just say this. Fandoms are usually what you do with your whole heart. Your fandoms are usually where you put your whole heart into things. Because there's certain things that you'll do a lot more for one fandom than another. For me, like with My Hero Academia, the movie came in theaters a couple weeks ago. That's spoilers. But the movie came to theaters, and so, you know, we bought tickets. We all dressed up, or at least in shirts and hats and stuff. We didn't do costumes, but we were there, and like people were like, "Why'd you pay to go watch an anime movie in theaters?" And I'm like, "Because it's important to us."
Yeah.
And like, you know, it's the same thing. My wife hasn't gone to a concert in forever, like just of her own choosing. But we bought floor seats for a 21 Pilots tour for our entire family. Recently, and it was one of those things like you get an early discounted rate if you sign up early enough in advance. I was just like, no, we're all doing this, and like we bought the clothes to go with it, everything else, because these things matter to us, so we put a little more effort into them. Right. And people see what you're passionate about, and if you let what you're passionate about be public and you let it be bold, then it can be something that can encourage you and it can encourage others. And you know, some of the people I've discipled in my lives came into my life because I was passionate about other things that they were passionate about. So I would encourage you, use your fandoms as a way to actually encourage your spiritual walk. Use it as a way to encourage other people's spiritual walks. The other verse we really attribute and really cling to when we're doing this is 1 Corinthians 9:22. Paul says to the rich, I became rich, to the poor, I became poor. He says, I have become all things to all people, that all means I might win some. There are people that will only be loved and reached by you actually being there in the things that they're involved in. One of the reasons, like I said, we did Faith and Fandom and we're doing what we're doing is we frequently have the discussion of like, are we done? Can we stop now? And I had actually considered myself done after the second book, and I was done. I was quit. I was over. Not that I was frustrated. That wasn't a negative. It was just, okay, that was fun. I'm over. But someone wrote to us who had just read a book and like, I don't know if you're thinking about not doing this anymore. Like I hadn't said anything, but she wrote to us and said, you can't. And she gave me like a long thing of like, this is why this is important. And like, I can honestly say the reason we're still doing this is because she hit us up at that right
You
time.
just made a new one.
Huh?
You just made a new one.
I did on that hustle. But it's a grind because like we're gone to I think we go to 28 cons a year. That's a lot. It's a lot of shows, and it's a lot of travel, and it's a lot of money, and because usually we make something, but it's barely like enough to cover expenses. Like, I don't know how this show is going to do. So like this might I might be in the hole. Who knows? But it's something that my family invests in. It's something my church invests in. My church hired me knowing this was going to be a deal. But that verse of I become all things to all people means I want to be Christ in this culture. I want to be an encouragement towards God in this culture, and that this is one of the ways I can do it. So I just encourage you that whatever the things that you're passionate about, you can be that in that culture.